The afternoon breeze gently blows through the lush gardens of the Aubenet mansion. The roses bloom in a spectacle of colors and fragrances, painting the scene in shades of red, pink and white. Louise Aubenet, the young heiress to an immense fortune, walks with a distant gaze along the stone paths, her face reflecting a deep melancholy. The beauty around her cannot calm the internal storm that torments her. Louise has always dreamed of true love, of that magical connection that everyone talks about but that seems unattainable in her life. Her reality is far from fairy tales. She is about to be forced into a marriage with Marcel de Mercier, a rich and influential man, but whose character leaves much to be desired. The idea of spending her life with someone who makes her feel desperate leaves her distressed. Her steps take her to the most hidden corners of the garden, a silent refuge where she feels safe to release the sadness she carries. The feeling of being surrounded by the natural beauty of the flowers and the murmur of the birds, although tempting, cannot fill the void Louise feels in her heart. She wonders if there is a way to escape the obligations and pressures imposed on her, longing for a glimpse of true happiness. In her mind, the garden becomes a sanctuary where she can momentarily free herself from the constraints of her predefined life. As Louise approaches the flower beds where the gardeners are working, a young man with his hands covered in dirt and his eyes shining in the sun catches her eye. His name is Adrien, a gardener recently hired to tend the estate's gardens. Upon seeing him, Louise feels something she has never felt before, an immediate connection with this simple, humble man. His presence seems to bring an inexplicable peace to Louise's restless mind. Adrien greets her with a shy smile and a "Hello, miss," as he continues to tend the flowers with a delicacy that conveys genuine affection. Louise, surprised by the softness of her own voice, responds with a "hello," feeling a warmth in her heart that she has not felt for a long time. She introduces herself, extending her hand in a gesture of friendship. Adrien hesitates for a moment, but finally accepts the greeting, his eyes shining with subtle admiration. The encounter is brief, but leaves a deep mark on Louise. She returns to the mansion a little lighter, carrying with her the memory of Adrien's smile and the feeling of being, for the first time in a long time, truly seen and understood. The idea of returning to the garden to see Adrien again becomes a small hope amidst the turmoil of her emotions, a spark of comfort and possibility in a life full of obligations and commitments that do not satisfy her. Louise is facing a formal meeting with Marcel de Mercier, the man her family wants to marry her to. The dinner is held in an elegant hall in the Aubenet mansion, decorated with golden chandeliers and luxurious tapestries that highlight the family's wealth. The atmosphere is charged with formality and expectation. Marcel arrives late, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, but his demeanor is anything but charming. When he enters the hall, his posture is arrogant and disdainful. He casts contemptuous glances around, greeting everyone with a negligent gesture. Louise watches his every move with a growing sense of repulsion. The way Marcel boasts about his luxuries and extravagant travels during dinner makes her feel sick. He monopolizes the conversation, revealing a rude and immature character, completely oblivious to his surroundings. With every word Marcel says, Louise feels her heart tighten. His promise of a future with someone so contemptuous and selfish seems an unbearable burden. The frustration of not having control over her own life makes her feel trapped, as if she is being pushed into an existence that takes her further and further away from her dreams and desires. After dinner, Louise can no longer contain her emotions and decides to confront her parents. She heads to the elegant tea room, her hands shaking with indignation. Her heart is heavy with a mixture of despair and determination. When she enters the room, her parents are waiting for her with expressions of surprise and coldness. The tension in the air is palpable, and Louise feels the weight of the world on her shoulders. In a voice thick with emotion, she declares that she cannot marry Marcel. Her words are a cry of pain and resistance against a destiny she did not choose. "I do not want to marry Marcel," she says, her voice breaking. "He is rude and spoiled. How can they expect me to be happy with someone like that?" Her parents' response is firm and unyielding. Her father, with a calm and stern expression, explains that marriage is important to the family and that Louise will learn to appreciate Marcel over time. His words strike Louise as a cruel blow. The idea of having to accept a life with someone who is not only unbearable, but also uninterested in getting to know her true essence, is overwhelming. She feels despair deepening. The feeling of helplessness at having to settle for a life she did not choose makes her question her own happiness and future. Louise knows that her words do not carry the weight needed to change her parents' decision, but she also knows that she cannot continue to live a lie. Her voice, filled with pain, cries out for an alternative, for a way to escape the invisible chains that bind her to an unhappy destiny. At dawn, Louise wakes up with a heavy heart. The oppressive feeling that has been with her since her encounter with Marcel de Mercier only grows stronger. The source of her life seems to be slowly drying up, suffocating her dreams and hopes. She needs a place where she can breathe, where she can find some peace amidst the emotional turmoil that is overwhelming her. Without hesitation, she puts on a simple outfit and heads to the garden, her secret refuge. The garden is a symphony of colors and fragrances, a place where the flowers seem to understand her pain. Louise loses herself among the flower beds, allowing the beauty of the environment to calm her agitated mind a little. As she walks, she sees Adrien, the gardener who takes care of the plants with a dedication that fascinates her. He is standing next to a bed of roses, his calloused hands handling the flowers with surprising delicacy. His presence there is an unexpected relief for Louise. She watches him in silence, enchanted by the way he moves among the plants, almost as if he were part of the garden. The scent of roses and the gentle sound of the wind in the leaves create a comforting backdrop to her tumultuous emotions. Adrien, with his simple and authentic manner, seems to be a light in the midst of the darkness that surrounds her life. His careful work and attention to detail reveal a depth and sensitivity that Louise has never encountered before. When Adrien finally notices her, he looks up and greets her with a shy smile. The sincerity in his eyes and the kindness in his voice are a balm for Louise's anguish. She approaches him and, despite her emotional turmoil, feels an immediate connection with him. Adrien, with his calm presence and gentle touch, seems to bring some peace to her restless mind. Louise realizes that being near him is like finding shelter in the midst of a storm. Days pass, and the need to escape her reality becomes increasingly urgent for Louise. She finds solace in visits to the garden, where conversations with Adrien become an essential escape. The garden, once a beautiful setting, is now an emotional refuge where Louise can express her anxieties and worries away from prying eyes and family obligations. Adrien, with his ability to listen and understand, becomes an anchor for Louise. She begins to seek out his company every day, finding temporary relief in conversations about flowers and nature. Every moment with Adrien is an escape from the pressures and expectations that surround her. He shares with her the stories behind the plants and the care with which he cares for each one, offering Louise a different perspective and a new sense of hope. As they talk, Louise slowly reveals her worries and fears. Adrien listens attentively and empathetically, his words becoming a comfort to her tormented soul. The garden, once a space of beauty, is now a place where she can expose her vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. The warmth of Adrien's company and the authenticity of their conversations help to soften the weight of her situation, providing a temporary sense of peace and belonging. As their friendship deepens, Louise finds the garden becoming a symbol of her desire to escape the shackles of life that imprison her. Each encounter with Adrien is a reminder that even in the midst of adversity, there are moments of beauty and true connection. His presence makes her question whether it is possible to find happiness and fulfillment on a path other than the one imposed on her. Louise begins to believe that the simplicity and sincerity that Adrien represents may be the key to her own freedom and happiness. As the weeks turn into months, Louise and Adrien's friendship deepens, and the garden becomes the setting for secret meetings that warm their hearts. Louise finds in Adrien not just a friend, but a confidant who understands her pains and dreams. Each conversation is an escape from the pressures she feels in her life, an opportunity to breathe and be genuinely herself. Adrian, in turn, is touched by Louise's sincerity and vulnerability, and his affection for her grows with each passing day. They meet in the most secluded parts of the garden, away from the prying eyes and social conventions that threaten to tear them apart. Amidst the lush greenery and the scent of the flowers, Louise begins to see Adrian not just as a gardener, but as an artist whose passion and care for each plant reveal a unique beauty. In his eyes, she finds a depth and kindness that contrast sharply with the superficiality and coldness of Marcel de Mercier, her arranged fiancé. As they talk about flowers and share personal stories, their connection grows stronger. Louise discovers that Adrian, despite his simple life, possesses a wealth of experience and wisdom that she would never have expected to find in someone of his social status. He makes her see the world in a new way, where the little things have profound meaning and where beauty can be found in every detail. The way he talks about gardening and caring for plants reflects a vision of life that resonates with what Louise has always dreamed for herself. On a particularly sunny day, as Adrian tends a flower bed, Louise watches the way he moves with natural grace. She realizes that his work is more than a chore, it is an expression of love and dedication. When Adrian, with a shy smile, offers her a freshly picked rose, Louise feels a surge of emotion. The rose, with its delicate petals and subtle scent, symbolizes everything she yearns for: pure beauty and genuine love. Spring advances, and the garden transforms into a spectacle of vibrant colors and delicious aromas. Louise and Adrian continue to meet secretly, and their friendship evolves into something deeper and more meaningful. Daily conversations become moments of intimacy, and the feelings that Louise tries to hide begin to manifest uncontrollably. The bond that was once a temporary escape from reality now reveals itself as something essential and true. One day, as the sun sets, tinting the sky with shades of gold and orange, Louise finds herself immersed in a conversation with Adrian. They talk about their dreams and hopes for the future, and Louise, with her heart racing, feels an unexpected courage. Amid the soft glow of dusk, she looks into Adrian's eyes and, with a tremor in her voice, reveals what she feels. "You know," she begins, "every day that I spend here, with you, I feel a peace that I have never experienced before." Words seem insufficient to describe how much your affection and dedication mean to me. Her heart pounds, and she continues, "I never thought I would find someone who understood my doubts and insecurities like you do. With you, I feel like I can be myself, without masks, without fears." Adrian, listening intently, feels the emotion in Louise's words. He approaches her, his gaze filled with tenderness and sincerity. "I have always admired you, Louise. Your spirit and kindness have brought light into my life. I never imagined I could feel something like this, but now, I cannot deny that my heart belongs to you." The moment is charged with a palpable intensity. They are surrounded by the beauty of the garden, but it is the sincerity of their feelings that illuminates the night. Louise and Adrian share a soft kiss, and the world around them seems to disappear. In that moment, all the challenges and pressures of life seem insignificant compared to the strength of their love. The revelation of their feelings transforms the garden into a place of promise and hope, where love flourishes in the midst of adversity. Their connection becomes a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the midst of turmoil, true love can thrive and illuminate the darkest paths. Tensions mount as Louise and Marcel de Mercier's wedding day approaches. Louise feels a growing weight on her chest, a mixture of anxiety and sadness that accompanies her every moment of the day. The approaching ceremony makes no sense to her, because her heart no longer belongs to Marcel, but to Adrian. Every thought of marriage takes her away from the reality of what she truly wants. Marcel, with his cold and calculating attitude, begins to notice the emotional distance that is being established between him and Louise. He becomes more insistent, trying to reassert his presence and authority, but his attempts are in vain. Louise is increasingly distant, her mind constantly turning to Adrian and the moments shared with him in the garden. In a particularly tense encounter, Marcel confronts her. He stares at her with a coldness that seems to cut the air around them. "Louise," he says, his voice firm, "you are distant and seem to be somewhere else. What is happening to you? Our wedding is about to happen, and you still don't seem ready." Louise tries to maintain her composure, but the pressure is overwhelming. She feels a mixture of guilt and despair. "Marcel," she answers, trying not to show the turmoil she feels inside, "I'm just worried about the details of the wedding. It's natural that I'm anxious." Marcel doesn't seem satisfied with the answer. His gaze becomes more penetrating, and he insists. "It's not just that, Louise. I can tell something's wrong. You're thinking about someone else, aren't you?" Louise's heart races, and her hands shake. She tries to keep her voice steady, but the words escape with a vulnerability she can't control. "It's not like that, Marcel. I'm just trying to adjust to the situation." The conversation ends with palpable tension, and Louise feels a crushing weight on her shoulders. The frustration and sadness are almost unbearable, and she finds herself in an emotional turmoil. The vision of her future with Marcel becomes increasingly unbearable, and she wonders if there is a way out of this emotional prison. As the wedding approaches, Louise finds herself immersed in a sea of conflicting emotions. The fear of the unknown and the pain of a life that no longer feels like hers are constant. She wonders if she is making the right decision and if her internal struggle is just a passing phase or something deeper. In her moments of solitude, Louise seeks refuge in the garden, where the flowers and trees become her silent confidants. There, amidst the serenity of nature, she reflects on her love for Adrian. The desire to escape the oppressive reality she lives in is a constant impulse, and the thought of a life with Adrian offers a hope that seems almost unattainable. Louise feels a mixture of fear and hope. The fear of displeasing her family and society is overwhelming, and she wonders if she will have the courage to follow her heart. The vision of Adrian makes her believe in a better future, but the reality of marriage with Marcel becomes a shadow that never leaves her. Each encounter with Adrian is a spark of hope. When he looks at her, she sees not only his love for her, but a possible life full of happiness and meaning. However, each time Louise leaves the garden and returns to the real world, fear and uncertainty envelop her like a thick fog. She tries to balance her feelings and find a solution to her situation. Love for Adrian and fear of the future are powerful forces that clash within her, creating a deep emotional conflict. Louise is in a state of constant introspection, trying to find the courage to do what she knows is right, even if it means facing her greatest insecurities. The days leading up to Louise's wedding drag on like an endless wait in a nightmare. Louise feels increasingly trapped, the emotional pressure almost unbearable. Each morning is a struggle to get out of bed, and the weight of her decisions hangs over her like a constant shadow. The sparkle in Marcel's eyes, his confidence in the ceremony, only increases her anguish. She tries to continue with the preparations, but the sadness is palpable. Every adjustment, every detail of the wedding seems like a cruel reminder of the future she does not want. The flowers, the invitations, the preparations, everything becomes an emotional torture, a constant reminder of the life she is about to lose. Louise searches for moments of escape, but even the escapes become painful. Deep in her mind, she knows that every attempt to escape reality is futile. The urge to scream, to express the despair she feels, is strong, but there is no one to hear her cries. The loneliness is overwhelming, and the feeling of being alone in a room full of people is a constant pain. In a moment of deep crisis, she finds herself alone in her room, crying silently. Each tear seems to carry the weight of decisions not made, of dreams not lived. Despair consumes her, and she wonders how she got to this point of desolation. The fear of what is to come is almost paralyzing, and Louise finds herself on the verge of an emotional breakdown. She kneels on the floor, her lips trembling as she tries to calm herself. Thoughts of Adrian are the only momentary relief, a faint light in the darkness. But the reality of her commitment to Marcel continues to press on her, and the pain of knowing that she is about to follow a path she did not choose becomes almost unbearable. Louise and Adrian's last meeting is charged with an almost palpable tension. Louise feels a knot in her stomach, a mixture of anxiety and hope. She knows that this may be the last moment she has with Adrian before the wedding, and the knowledge torments her. They meet in their special place in the garden, the same setting that has witnessed so many moments of intimacy and love. The air is filled with a melancholy that matches Louise's emotional state. Adrian, with his deep and understanding gaze, notices the pain in her eyes and the uneasiness in her voice. "I don't know what to do, Adrian," Louise says, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm losing a part of myself with every passing moment." Adrian watches her with a mix of sadness and concern. He reaches out and holds her hand, his touch gentle and comforting. "Louise, what's happening is not easy for anyone. But you need to listen to your heart. I'm here for you, I always will be, but you need to find the courage to follow what you truly want." The conversation flows between the two, and each word feels like an additional weight on Louise's soul. She talks about her fears, her doubts, and the uncertain future that awaits her. Adrian listens patiently, every expression on his face a mix of love and pain. The bond between them is palpable, a connection that transcends words. Louise's heart sinks, knowing that time is running out. The thought of leaving Adrian is unbearable, but the fear of the unknown keeps her paralyzed. "If I could change everything right now, I would," she says, tears streaming down her face. "But I don't know if I have the courage to do it." Adrian holds her close, offering silent comfort. They stay like that for a while, wrapped in an embrace that speaks more than words ever could. The goodbye is painful, and Louise feels as if she is saying goodbye not only to Adrian, but to a part of herself. Louise's wedding day begins with an unsettling calm, a tranquility that contrasts with the turmoil inside her. As the final preparations are underway, she feels like a puppet on a stage, pulled by invisible strings that pull her in directions she cannot control. The wedding dress shimmers under the lights, a dazzling sight that only accentuates the sense of imprisonment Louise feels. With each step, Louise's heart beats faster, her chest tightening with anxiety and doubt. The ceremony is about to begin, and she knows the decisive moment is approaching. The words she must speak, the promise she will make, feel like an immense weight she cannot bear. The truth is that the decision she is about to make is not her own, but rather a reflection of the expectations that have been imposed on her. In the midst of this internal battle, Louise feels an irrepressible urge. The pressure to follow the path that has been laid out for her becomes almost unbearable, and a bold idea forms in her mind. Her mind. She can't ignore the urge to do something unexpected, something that might free her from this emotional prison. Fear and excitement mix as she prepares to act. With a determined look, Louise makes a choice that defies everything that was expected. She leaves the chaotic environment of preparation and, with a mixture of courage and desperation, begins to head towards a place where she can be alone. The feeling of breaking away from everything that was planned consumes her, but it also brings immediate relief. Louise feels her heart race with each step she takes, adrenaline propelling her forward. The decision she is about to make is a silent cry for freedom, an act of bravery in the midst of despair. As the sun shines in the blue sky, the feeling of freedom is almost an illusion for Louise. She runs, her feet pounding against the ground, the wind in her face. The world around her becomes a blur of colors and sounds, but the clarity of her decision is unshakable. Each step she takes is an affirmation of her choice, a rejection of the invisible chains that try to bind her. She heads toward a place that symbolizes freedom and new beginnings, a refuge that gives her hope. Panic and excitement mix in her mind as she walks away from the landscape that could have been her prison. The path she is taking is known only to her, but it is full of meaning and promise. Louise's mind is a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings. Every decision she has made has brought her here, but she is more focused on the future than the past. The weight of other people's expectations begins to lift, replaced by a determination to follow her own path. She feels a mixture of relief and guilt, a stark contrast between the feeling of being free and the pain of having left everything behind. The feeling of running away is as intense as the decision to leave. Louise realizes that she is breaking away from a significant part of her life and that in doing so, she is launching herself into an unknown that both frightens and fascinates her. The fear of what lies ahead is palpable, but the need to be true to herself is even stronger. Every step she takes is an affirmation of her will to live authentically, despite the doubts and fears. Louise's escape is an act of courage in its purest form, a bold move to escape the pressure and oppression that surrounds her. But as she moves further away from what she has known, doubt lingers. Has she found the right path, or has she simply moved away from the safety of a predictable future? The answer remains unclear as Louise moves forward, freedom and fear walking side by side. The night is silent when Louise decides to meet Adrian. She is nervous, feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. The streets are deserted, the dim lighting creating shadows that dance as she walks. Each step is a struggle between hope and fear of the unknown. Her heart beats fast, anticipating the meeting with Adrian, who represents a chance for change and redemption. When she sees him, an immediate relief engulfs her. Adrian is there, with a welcoming smile, which immediately dissolves the tension Louise feels. They embrace, and the feeling of being in his arms is comforting, as if the outside world did not exist. Words are unnecessary, the looks and touches convey a deep and sincere connection. Louise feels that she has made the right decision. The weight of social pressure and expectations begins to dissipate, replaced by the feeling of being exactly where she is supposed to be. Adrian understands her without judgment, and this acceptance is the key to the new beginning she seeks. The night progresses, and they walk together, sharing dreams and hopes. Louise realizes that freedom is not just an escape, but the chance to build something true and lasting. She smiles, feeling a peace she has not experienced in a long time. The journey has been difficult, but meeting Adrian confirms that choosing to follow her own path was the right move. The future is still uncertain, but with him by her side, Louise feels ready to face what lies ahead, certain that she has found her true path. Like and subscribe for more amazing love stories.